All right. Hey guys, another episode of the Restaurant. Today we're here with Chet Horton. Chet, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Chet is over there in West Virginia with Butch. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, Chet.
Well, I retired from the Army in 2020. I was old. I was an old soldier. I joined when I was in high school, my junior year in 1986. And then I had a 10-year break I got out in 95 and then got back in 2006. And then I finished out my career from there. And I had like 9 years active duty, 2 deployments. I worked the last since 2015, I was straight National Guard, what they call M-Day, which means I only go to my drills and annual training. From 2006 to 2015, I worked full-time for the Army National Guard, either on active duty or as a federal technician. So I transferred over to the VA, and that's where I work now, which I'm getting ready to retire from as well.
Well, speaking of the military, do they allow you to have any hand in in training with them or anything like that? Or sometimes
they have a really robust combatives training program.
Do they still follow the Gracie thing? They were doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, that is involved. That is a heavy part of the basis of their training system, but it's not just that. I mean, obviously they got 5 levels of it, and you have to go through it, and it's not just about grappling, and it's all ranges of combat, even with weapons and so on. You're training for
battlefield
contact, without
yeah, because that's
you're walking around the corner, it happens. You're trained for it to do it correctly, but the enemy gets a vote and someone grabs the end of your weapon. What do you do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's just a part of the training. And I think people like outsiders too, which this may be kind of interesting for people to know. It's like the training is not very robust, right? I think yours is more the when they have all that, you have more. But like, for example, and I'm not knocking them, but like, I've had friends train Navy SEALs and be a part of that. I was part of the Marines at Quantico.
Yeah.
That training is like 2-3 weeks long. And you've got to fit a lot of stuff in. Like by that, I mean just part of the training, right?
Yeah.
So I think outsiders, because they watch a lot of like John Wick and Jason Bourne and all this stuff, they're like, especially with the Navy SEALs, like they're like, man, these guys are going to do this Jason Bourne stuff.
Yeah.
And you're just like, no, these guys are just uncanny people that have a mindset they're not going to quit.
Right.
They're not training jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, or whatever it is day in and day out. Now, a lot of them do on kind of even extra training on their own.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, it's not what, like even me, I remember the first time I was like, oh, so I just literally thought everybody was like Jason Bourne. Like I had no idea.
No.
I think, people think that, maybe naively, but.
You go, like, if you go to the basic, we call it level 1, that's just a basic, I don't know, a week or 2 long course, and it can be broken up into days. Like this is on the training schedule for this weekend, and then you do it like 1 weekend a month for whatever, or you can do it for a straight week. Go to the schoolhouse. On your active duty, you just go to the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Where your guard, you may have to fit it in over a 3-month period and put it on your training schedule for X amount of hours each drill. But the level 1 is a very basic grappling. You got to close to the clinch. They do level 1 in basic training. And it used to be, I don't know if they still do it or not, but you had to sign a waiver to get punched in the face. And they punch you in the face right off the bat, and, you know, bloody you up a little bit and teach you, you can live past that punch. You got to get to the clinch, get them on the ground, and then you start your grappling cycle. It's a very basic flow drill from guard, you know, past the guard, go to mount, you know, gift wrap, take the back, and you just keep, you know, cycling through that type of, you know, drill. And that's kind of all level 1 is.
Yeah.
And then you graduate that, and you know, you go to level 2, which I don't know what level 2 is. I wasn't involved in that, but my buddy Ben Rothrock, that's out of North Carolina, he graduated from the level 5 course. That's intense.
Yeah.
That's a very high level jiu-jitsu, MMA type class. You have to do an MMA fight amongst each other to graduate. And there were like 75 people in his class for level 5, and they finished with 5.
Yeah, and they actually have a big, just like you said, they have a big tournament. I have a friend that competed in that, and they'll wear their fatigues or uniform, whatever you call it, and
I competed in 2 of those.
Yeah, those are really neat, I think, because I used to. We've kind of talked about this on a podcast before, but there was a time when when you couldn't find MMA on TV because it's, you know, it's semi illegal. But there's a time when everybody's kind of trading tapes. But those are some of the tapes that I got were the Army combative system and stuff. I had like 2 or 3 of, and you may have been in one of them. I don't have those tapes anymore.
Well,
but
I don't know that I did my 2 in 2009 when I was training. I went to officer candidate school in 2008, and then in 2009 I went to my advanced training, which both my advanced training was 7 months total. It was 2 levels back then, and they've since combined those 2 levels. And I spent 9 weeks at Fort Benning, which is the combat arms, so-called Army, we use capital, you know, the combat arms capital of the Army. You know, it's where it's all headquartered there. The maneuver center, they call it. That was right before that happened, but the infantry was based there, and the Rangers were based there. And so I did a combatives tournament there, and that was tough. That was a very tough one. And then I went on to my advanced training, which was 6 months long at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And I did another one there in 2009. And then later I went on a deployment, and I actually did Muay Thai for a year in Kuwait with a Filipino former professional Muay Thai fighter from the Philippines. They hired him to come there, and that was his job at Camp Buring, was to teach Muay Thai.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And I got a real quick rewinding back to 2000. How old were you when you competed in those?
39. It was tough, man. I was going against a bunch of people, 25-year-olds, you know.
Yeah. So
my whole training, everything, I was old. I was an old man. I was old. Like I could be almost most of my peers' father. I was that much older than they were. You know, they were straight out of West Point. You know,
well, the reason that I really asked, I'm always interested. Obviously, I was always an older competitor when I would compete. Yeah. I've always competed in, for the most part, adult divisions. And I started training jiu-jitsu at 31, and I'll be 41 now. But, you know, I was 35, and those guys were just a little bit older than my daughter when I would compete against them. And I'm always curious how it felt. And then on top of that,
it sucked.
Sometimes it does. And we don't have the ability to, like, I can do jiu-jitsu well, but I don't have the athleticism or the endurance that a 26-year-old guy has.
Yeah. Recovery ability between matches.
Or training.
Yeah. And training. Yeah.
But there was a here in North Carolina, there was a combat jiu-jitsu thing that was going on. I think it was this past weekend. or maybe it was yesterday. I don't know.
That was my buddy Ben's, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
Somebody told me about it, and then after I caught wind, I was like, maybe I kind of want to do it. I don't know.
They do striking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Ben's. They did combat jiu-jitsu and I believe he's heavily involved in Sambo too.
Okay.
So I think he combined the striking event in his tournaments is combat jiu-jitsu, and the grappling event is Sambo now. I mean, he likes BJJ. He's a BJJ black belt under, I can never pronounce this guy's name, Joe Moria.
Close
California.
Enough. Yeah, Herrera's close, but that, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, he loves BJJ too, but he loves Sambo. That's his thing. But my teacher and his teacher there's this thing called combat jiu-jitsu. It's huge in Europe, but in Europe, it's full contact.
Right.
It's full contact. You don't score a point unless if you get a point. Like if I punch you in the face, I don't get it's very much like kickboxing or, you know, Muay Thai. If I hit you in the face and I don't move you off your spot, I don't get nothing.
Well, no, this is a good point, or a good time to really break that down, describe it too. Because, for example, like now, just like everything else, so in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which a lot of people are going to listen to this just because Gary and I, right, that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what we call combat Jiu-Jitsu, it's the Eddie Bravo thing now where they're slapping each other.
Yeah.
And it's mostly no-gi, actually.
Yeah.
But people I don't think so. And it gets confusing, right? Because when we call sport Jiu-Jitsu, like it means we're rolling, and then
it does get confusing.
Yeah, so I'm constantly explaining the difference to people that just say, "What's the difference in this?" And I'm like, "Look, we got the same names. They're different, right?" So sometimes when you talk to somebody and they say something different, it doesn't mean they're lying, because that's what I talked to this guy and he's full of crap. And I was like, no, it's an entirely different thing. Like, you don't know what they're talking about. So that's why I think this might be a good thing. So explain your guys' version of combat jiu-jitsu and the European version, just so people know, because I really think that this would be something that could take off. Like, it's like you and I've talked back and forth in email, because you said, I think you guys would like it. And we've done on and off some versions of it through the years, but I don't think anybody knows. Like, they have no idea.
It does.
Like, in our community, for sure, straight between jiu-jitsu, they're lost, Yeah.
Well, so the Europeans have been doing this for years, and it's huge over there. It's MMA. It's 100% MMA.
They mostly wear the gi. Am I correct?
In a gi. It's MMA in a gi on a mat, not in a cage.
Yeah.
But like, you gotta submit someone or knock them out to win. And you do get advantage points. Like, if I punch you and knock you down, that's an advantage point.
Yeah.
But you only get to the advantage points if no one wins by submission. Then you start counting up advantage points, and it's hard to get an advantage point in the European one, because like, you got to hurt somebody to get a point. If it's a normal punch and my head snaps back and I get a bloody nose or whatever, that's not really an advantage point. Advantage point is like, I hit you and you fall down, or you stagger backwards, or I move you off your spot, and it's obvious to everybody in there that I hit you and you had to take a step back, or you went sideways a little bit, or it was a really, really obvious significant strike would be an advantage point. And then so that's kind of the European. It's full contact, and they do have a dialed back version for youth, but I don't think it's appropriate for youth, because it's just too hard, and even their dialed back version, if you're going to strike with the kids and let the kids strike, more like what the old school sport jiu-jitsu would be, that'd be more appropriate for kids, to let them blend the striking and grappling and takedowns. But if you're just going for the kids, if you're just going to grapple, BJJ is the best route,
Can they hold the gi and strike like a hockey fight, or is that like they're like no holding and?
Yeah,
they can. Okay.
Yeah. You can grab the gi and knee, throw knees, throw elbows.
So yeah, just and then
headbutt, you can headbutt.
Yeah, well, I remember that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think, like, if
Europeans don't play.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if we combined all of them together, and you almost had like you could have different levels of amateur and pro, right? But right now, there's different organizations doing them.
Yeah.
And I think there's advantage to, but like some people, I think, for example, like the open hand striking. Obviously they did it in Japan forever, called pancrase, and some famous fighters did it, Bas Rutten, Genki Sudo, on and on and on. But like there's value in a lot of that, right? Like there's a lot of people be like, well, I'll take an open hand strike, I don't want to get a closed fist strike, and then maybe that's a good way to get your feet wet, and then you could kind of work your way into a straight thing. Which, I know. I think that's probably you guys' philosophy, and especially with the self-defense, we're talking a real martial art, right? It's the closest thing.
Right now, the American version of combat jiu-jitsu, Professor Maynard, who's my teacher, he got the European people selected him as the national director for the U.S. And so he put Ben in charge because he has the biggest competition portfolio, so to speak, and he's very heavy into the grappling side of it and the hardcore fighting aspects, and he put me in there with him to help, but I pretty much just come and help him run the tournaments. I'm not in the decision making loop. He'll ask me every now and then. I'll referee some, but he's the leader of that whole thing. But it's they started out with a more dialed back version, and not full contact because of the boxing commissions.
Yeah,
and it's difficult. It's probably going to be difficult to do in West Virginia.
Yes, and I remember and that's so. Just so you know, that's why MMA became illegal here, is because they showed up at one of those nitro fights, and they're like, "What the hell's going on?" And it kind of flew under the radar. Everybody thought it was martial arts, and then finally, like Steve Allred, all those guys that were the commissioners at the time showed up, and it was probably one of the worst ones. They were beating up on a little karate school. And I was there, and they're pulling guys off in stretchers, and that was it. That was the end. Like, they're like, no more of this stuff, which they thought was all MMA, not realizing it was just some one-off thing. You know what I mean? Like,
he was the wrong guy to be leading that.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to put names out there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, saying it just like that. Yeah, I agree, and I don't know the details. I just know what I saw there was a little rough, but so it kind of messed everybody up for a little while, right? And we're just all now recovering. It took MMA all those years, and that's literally like when I was in there fighting for MMA to become legal, when it was just me before the UFC got involved. That's the stuff that I was arguing with, because they were like, well, I've seen it, and I'm like, that is not it. Like, we have rules, and you're this, and you're not fighting. Because the one that they specifically got it mad at, I think like Warren or one of those, or Bob Steins, like somebody that was awesome, beat a 16-year-old kid up, right? Like, it was awful. Yeah. It was not good. But it's like, that's unfortunately kind of not. It wasn't their fault. Those are the fights that got put together for those guys.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was. But anyway, so and then and I think that hurt things here too, right? Because everything was.
Yeah, for sure.
And be honest, like for the same, like it sounds like we're talking trash and maybe a little bit, but on the other hand, not the guy that's putting it out, but some of the fighters, those guys are awesome. They fought in Japan, they fought all over the country.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate thing, is there was really skilled, great people out there.
Yeah.
But it all kind of got taken away.
They got screwed because the person running it at the time let his ego get involved and did not want to work with the boxing commissions.
Yeah,
and basically he didn't want to give them their money.
Yeah, well,
if for licensing or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fairness too, like they were hard to work with. Let's put it. I'll give everybody
I remember that, because they were all boxers, and they didn't. It was all very, they didn't want anything. The only thing that mattered was boxing.
Yes. Well, and just for context, context. One of the commissioners at the time, 100% fact, told me that UFC fighting and grappling was nothing more than gay porn. That was straight from yeah. So I mean, that's what we were dealing with. So, you know, without knowing the whole history, like there was a lot of bad people involved in the things, and then egos probably got in the way, right? Because even the ego on the commission side would be like, well, if I don't want, you know, I'm the guy in charge, this is not happening, and then everybody's just fighting back and forth. It was just a bad time. Like if I'm going to give everybody a little bit of you know, badness in that thing, it is on everybody, not just one person, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
But so I mean, that's why I think, you know, there is a little confusion, but I think, and we've talked in email before, if we're talking like self-defense and something that's applicable for the street and fighting, I think you guys have a great thing. You're mixing everything together where, you know, that's what I kind of do similar to you guys on my own. I don't say like, hey, we're just doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not knocking Gracie Jiu-Jitsu at all.
Right.
But like, it's something different. And it's some of it, for that matter, has got commercialized to a degree now where it's a money-making thing, but they're never adding in striking. And my thing's always been, like, I love, because that's my background from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I love it, right? But if I'm in a bar, like, I don't necessarily want to go one-on-one with a guy on the ground, because most likely somebody else is going to jump in, right? We're also talking about distances at some point where if I'm 2 inches from somebody, maybe I want to clinch them, maybe I want to throw some knees, maybe I want to throw some elbows. Like, just to never address striking whatsoever is kind of silly. Now, again, that being said, now Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, like, it isn't just grappling. If you look at the old stuff, they used to throw some strikes, like side. You know, it's kind of giving them a bad rap now, but, you know, that's the thing. I think there's some aspects that you should address for sure, and you guys do. And then most gyms, like myself and Gary's or whatever, we kind of do our own thing. We add Muay Thai or Krav in it, and then we have our thing, you know. But I think personally, that's why I want to talk to you. I mean, I think there's a great thing going, and people need to know, you know, that it's out there. You know, I mean, like, and what exactly it entails, everything that you guys do.
Well, I'll run down. I do what's called American Combat Jiu-Jitsu. And Professor Maynard founded it in the 80s. And it's not a Japanese system, but it has Japanese roots. Okay. And my teacher, he has black belts in 2 or 3 different types of karate, judo, and he really loved the judo part and the grappling and the throws but you know, he could strike too, but like if you ever see him do a seminar, he'll do seminars for me in different places at tournaments and this, that, and the other. And he's a really awesome dude to have talk. Because like, he's a Vietnam era guy. He wrestled a bear when he came back from Vietnam, and that's how he got his nickname.
Really?
The Bear Maynard. Yeah. And he's got a whole story about it. It's funny to hear him tell the story. And so anyway, they were like, oh yeah, Tony Maynard, we heard of him. And like what he would do is they'd go to these tournaments, and you know, back then it was kind of like a free-for-all type thing. Everybody was competing. Karate was huge, and you know, and he was trying to push jiu-jitsu. And he was one of the first Americans to ever compete internationally in a form of jiu-jitsu. And it was for the World Council of Jiu-Jitsu at the time. And that was in 1984. And so he was pushing jiu-jitsu a lot around, you know, all these people trying to get the karate people. So he'd go to these karate tournaments, and you know, they get in that karate stance, sideways stance, really bladed stance. Yeah. And he just passed their arm to take their back and choke them. And they'd be like, oh yeah, Tony, he just wants to choke you. He just wants to take your back and choke you. And he's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah. So I like that excuse. He just wants to choke you and beat you in 2 seconds. That's not fair.
Yeah. So that's kind of like our philosophy is you know, devastation through simplicity is the system motto, and we do a lot of striking with it. One of his teachers was Wally J, and I know you've heard about Wally J through your past. Wally J isn't just about the small circle jiu-jitsu. When Wally J did it, not when his son's doing it, when Wally J did it, it was not just about finger locks. And it wasn't kind of a eclectic art. It was a hard, painful thing. And he could do throws. Wally J boxed in college. So like a lot of this was blended into his system, that his background, he was a judo coach. Wally J was a judo coach in Hawaii for a long time.
I know. I'm glad you brought that all up too, because that's the part I think what you mentioned is what I know of is just the smart, because the book's the small circle jiu-jitsu. So you see all these finger locks and wrist locks and stuff. Not that they're terrible, but that's the part. A lot of times when a guy that does what we do, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, starts seeing that, like red flags go off, whether it's true or not. Without even know his name, you're like, that's what all those other hokey people do, and then they just shut off, you know.
Yeah, and then it's kind of, you know, his son who's over the system now did not help the reputation doing. He got caught on a video supporting a dude doing a no-touch knockout type thing, and it just kind of, you know, gave it a bad deal. But that we're not, and you know, the small circle is involved in our system, but it's more about the small circle isn't a finger lock. It's a technique. It's in small circular movement, and you know, that's the basis of, there's principles of it, and it's very similar to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu 32 principle. There's a lot of the same stuff in both of them, but he just has 9 principles of it. And you know, but what it boils down to is you can use it in your takedowns, you know, and you know, you lock up with somebody and you think about a small circular movement, so you pivot to get them off balance, and then you can go initiate your takedown and use the small circle movement to help off balance and get them onto the ground. You know, that's more how we apply the small circle part of that system. You know, the finger locks are effective. They hurt. They're effective. Pain compliance is effective, but you're not going to stop a fight. When a fight starts, you're not going to use a finger lock or a wrist lock. What those are for is to prevent a fight from kicking off, or when you get control, to slow a fight down and control without having to do it. It's another way, instead of like choking somebody out, if you wanted to maintain control of them. Once you got to use all the Brazilian jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu or your grappling, you got to still use all your techniques that you got to do to get control of someone, right? You know, position for submission. You got to get the position before you can use finger locks and that kind of stuff. And a lot of people just think of it as the wrong, you know.
Well, unfortunately, because of the charlatans out there, right? But which is why, honestly, like having you on is perfect, because like we have the identical same mindset, really, and that's important for people to know, because all that stuff kind of screwed. Like, because I tell people too, like, listen, well, I wouldn't do that. Like, well, you would if you're a bouncer or you're a cop and you're just trying to move somebody around. Like, that's the point.
And the other thing a lot of people don't realize right now, in West Virginia, they changed the law about choking someone. It's now a felony.
It's a great point.
And you know, the way they wrote the law, it's obviously intended for domestic violence.
Yeah.
But they didn't write the law that way. It doesn't say, it just says you have to have permission to choke someone.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Or it's a felony.
It's not going to work at all, right? Like,
you know, so, you know, you go to class, you're giving someone permission to choke you. You go to a tournament, you're giving someone, but like if you're at a bar, you're not giving somebody permission. But, you know, it's all in like, you know, more than likely police officers are not going to use that in a bar fight.
Yeah.
But unless you choke out the prosecutor's son.
Well, there's a lot going on. Like, I mean, just think, like if you had the example of Tony, right? Let's say that you are trying to control somebody. He gets a little crazy, you spin around, put your arm around his throat, you're not maybe going to choke him, but you can lead the guy out like, hey, let's walk out here. You're going to listen.
Yeah.
You can argue that's the start of a choke, and that's the dangerous part. You know what I mean? Like it's people that don't do jiu-jitsu or don't do what we do. Like I know where their heart's at, so that's why I don't. You know, it's hard to argue with them. Right? A couple of people died getting choked. I get it. Right? It's like you have it on the right thing, but to take that out altogether, it's not good. It's probably one of the safest. Control somebody. Now, unfortunately, not what we've seen. So don't get that confused. What I'm saying is, some people have done things that are awful, but like the same thing, I could. Let's say a cop's allowed to punch you. Well, we know a punch is one thing, but what if I punched you until you're dead? That's the same thing, right? Like,
they abuse. So a few of them have abused that whole concept, and
I think too. A lot of times, what happens is that like people, like Butch was saying, people being unfamiliar with something, right? And if they don't have any exposure to it, then they don't know what it is. And then you see these few instances, their first exposure to a choke is death. This dude died. He got choked. Okay, well, thousands times a day, people get choked unconscious in jiu-jitsu. And it happens all the time. I know people, Butch knows people, I'm sure you know people who have been choked to sleep, and woke up and went on with life and everything was fine and it was just training or whatever. But the first time that people see an actual choke applied, and really sometimes those chokes aren't even real, like good chokes. They're you know, they're more damaging chokes. But they'll see a choke applied, and it's the first time they ever seen it. It leads to death. And the problem, really, I mean, it's not unlike. And for me, I think people should be allowed to have guns, and I'm pro Second Amendment and all this stuff. But when your only exposure to something is negative, then there's no way, it's going to be real hard for you to teach somebody that there's a positive to that. And I think not unlike anything else, it really is education, gun safety. You want people to be okay with guns, you need to teach people gun safety. You want people to be okay with chokes. They need to understand chokes and be able to say, hey, there's a safe way to use it. It's all education. It's not, and unfortunately, we live in a society where it's easy to exploit that one bad thing and to blow it up. And to not get too political, I think it's kind of the same thing with people being anti-cop or people being like, all of these things come from the fact that we see these small, a small number of cases. They're anecdotal and they get blown up to be this huge thing. Like, this is all cops. This is all guns. This is all chokes.
I 100% agree with that. And like some of the times that they've got some of the examples that got blown up in the media, the choke isn't what killed the person. Positional asphyxiation is what killed the person a few times. And what that is, if you can imagine laying down on your back and having 10 people lay on top of you, your lungs collapse and you lose your ability to inhale, and it's just like maybe we're doing a technique, when somebody inhales, that's when you ratchet it up so they can't exhale, and the positional asphyxiation where 5 people were piled on top of this dude, and that's why he died. He didn't die from the choke. He died because he couldn't breathe, and it wasn't because the choke, it was, one's a choke, one's a strangulation. And you cut the air off, I believe that's strangulation. Choke is where you cut the blood off. It could have been the strangulation because somebody maybe had it across his larynx and cut the wind off. But most of the ones we see, it's the rear naked choke, which is a blood choke, And so the 5 people, 300-pound cops that were piled on top of this dude is why he couldn't breathe.
Right. And I think and this is the other thing too, is me trying to defend chokes is not necessarily trying to defend the actions of a person. Right.
Exactly.
I'm not taking position saying that what somebody did is right or wrong.
Right.
What I'm saying is that because someone used something poorly is not reason to eliminate it as a tool.
Yeah.
Right. And a poor use of a tool is not, if people go around and beat everybody with hammers, we don't stop selling hammers.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and that's, I think that's kind of my thing is like, we are vilifying things that are useful because somebody used them poorly.
Yes.
You know, and that's it's a slippery slope when we start doing that, because it makes it easier to eliminate other things that we can deem useful, whether it be language, whether it be rights. And so, and like I said, it's not to get too political, because I'm not trying to alienate anybody. Right, I love people, I love everybody, but I'm just, I think it's scary to think that, you know, some things like a choke be deemed illegal unless you have permission. Like, it just seems silly that, like,
they just need to rewrite that law.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I could go there and I could defend myself by beating you in the face until you're dead. But I can't. But if I choke you unconscious and leave, that was illegal. You wake up, that was the illegal thing.
But just so you got, like, for context and a little story, like when I was years ago fighting in West Virginia to make MMA legal, that was the biggest thing that I had a hard time getting across to people. You know, when I was up in front of whatever you call them, the senators or House of Delegates, all that. That was the question I was. They literally said, "There's no way you can convince me that choking somebody unconscious is safer than punching them." Right?
Wow.
And I was like, "Have you not thought this through? Have you not? Because you guys, you know, this is way back before anything crazy was happening." But I was like, "Do you guys, you know, football's all on the TV." About being so dangerous from getting hit in the head, but you're saying I can just punch this guy until he physically cannot stand up and he's unconscious. He may not live. At that time, I think 9 people died a year of boxing, and you know, it's a perception issue that it's hard because, like, we accept boxing no matter how dangerous it is. It's been around forever, so just accept it. You're like, let's give that guy 8 seconds to recover after he's been given a concussion, and he should be fine in 8 seconds. But in the NFL, he's got to take 2 weeks off. Right, it literally doesn't make sense. But and then you know, I even brought up luckily they had some studies in judo where doctors actually studied being choked unconscious and everything. There was no ill side effects, and that was kind of my point. I said, you guys do know that choking somebody is actually an Olympic sport? And they're like, what? And I was like, well, judo is an Olympic sport, and you could do it all day long. There's been plenty of studies. All the studies for the punching the person, which you accept, are far worse, right? And it was just like an argument today. Like, when you have that argument, the next step was, well, fuck you, I don't really care. It literally, and that was in front of like I said, they're like, I don't care, it's just human cockfighting, I don't like it, you know. And I was like, but you lost the argument. So for abandoning it for your argument, you just failed, you know. And then again, to be honest, you know, it didn't matter, because ultimately MMA is legal in West Virginia because what they call lobbying, which is literally just giving people some money to vote a certain way. But you know, the stuff is annoying to me. The whole thing's annoying. But again, it's a perception thing, and that's what's bummer. Like, and I think you did a good job, both of you guys, of saying, like, whenever you have the argument, you kind of go down a slippery slope, or somebody could take it the wrong way. And we're like, no, this is what we do. We know it's safe. You know, like 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, like, we're training, people don't get choked out. Really, it's like you're giving them the option. If they do get choked out, we've been there a million times. Within 10 seconds or whatever, you wake back up. It's not that big a deal, but it does look scary. And because how many times have you seen a movie or somebody puts a pillow over somebody's face and they die? That's a different thing, right? Like, it's hard to differentiate the two, right? From, you know, whatever. It's just one of the weird things about doing jiu-jitsu. Like, we love choking people. It's just an everyday thing, right? Like, and somebody's saying you can't do it no more, and it's weird, and we're like, what? That's what we do. This is why we're here, you know? You know,
I really wish they would go rewrite that law and make it was intended for domestic violence.
Yeah.
And it was intended for this choke. You know, that's the domestic violence choke is why they put it in there in the first place. And, like, they need to be more specific with it, and like let someone, put a I don't know, in a part B or part A underneath the law that says if in self-defense situations, you are allowed to defend yourself, and just leave it at that.
Yeah, and the unfortunate
I was gonna say I steered us down a path away from what we were talking about. I want to try and pull it back towards towards the AK. Is it AKJU?
Well, he doesn't do that, but the reason he said that I was describing kind of like the Randori at the AKJU.
Yeah, I have had my kids go do their tournaments.
Yeah. So while he's asking that, I was trying to explain combat jiu-jitsu with what Gary knew, and I said it's kind of like the AKJU, a little bit different. Like they don't punch the head, and it's a lot different, but similar.
Right now, the combat jiu-jitsu in the U.S., the last tournament that they had it wasn't full contact, but it's hard, stiff contact, and they have there is striking on the ground to the body. You can strike to the body and to the head, but to get the ground and pound win, you have to lock somebody out to where they can't defend themselves, and then put 5 good form strikes, hit the mat with 5 good form strikes right next to their head, to where
like a gift wrap.
To simulate, to simulate you've locked them up in a ground and pound situation, and they would not be able to defend it, and they would get knocked out from it.
I like that. Yeah.
And that's the kids' version in Europe, is what the adults are doing here. They can't have the kids doing the full contact, so they let them do that. But it's hard contact. The punches and the kicks to the body are stiff.
And going back to what kind of started this whole thing is 100%, like for people that don't know the rules, like I don't remember exactly how it's written, but like it used to be that the athletic commission has anything to do with any kind of striking, period. Like once you start striking and have an audience that's paying, then it's commission of them, which is why, like in California, for example, they have what they call smokers, and people have literally MMA or Muay Thai fights in gyms, and it's fine, but you can't do that here. And I would argue, I kind of agree with them, because then that's going to stop. Like maybe the 3 of us can throw a great event, nothing's happening. Then the 4th guy is doing what we said earlier, where some 6-year-old kids getting knocked out by some grown man. That's not good, right? Like I do think there should be some oversight. It's just rough because like they let karate tournaments go, as they should, right? And that is striking, but they're charging, but kind of not. Like they're also, most of the competitors are, the
admission is like $5. In most tournaments you pay $5 admission, you get, and that like pays for the trophies, and my martial arts tournaments are my best fundraisers, but like I still don't make a lot of money. Let's face it. Like, I might have 25 competitors, and I might make $500.
Well, and you need that money. For people that don't understand, I've spent time explaining this too. Like, martial arts is not something you go in to make money. Now you can, right, for sure, but then we're going to bastardize the sport that we love to make money, right? And some people do that, and that's our complaint. So by not doing that, that means you're not going to make a lot of money, which means in order to keep your school running and subsidize, you're going to have to do tournaments and do things like that. And so the times you're not making money, and it's stupid because I sometimes have to feel like I have to justify why we're doing tournaments, and people are like, oh, you make this money. Well, yeah, but I also lost $1 million, or I have fighters that give me no money, and I pay for their gas and their food, and I give all this time to them. Like it all equals out, and basically we're all doing this because we love it. It doesn't matter. We're not making enough to make this our job. I mean, the kind of job that I want to live at, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I pay to run my school in Beckley. I don't. We have zero income. All of our classes are free, and I pay for my American Combat Jiu-Jitsu charter, but I'm going to use that also in Mason County. That's going to be a for-profit school, by the way. It's not going to be a nonprofit.
Well, since you talked about, let's talk about your nonprofits and profit school. Like, I don't know if we give them a proper shout out where all they're at and what's the difference and what all they're doing.
Well, in Beckley, West Virginia, we have East Park Martial Arts, and me and another guy I'd moved to Beckley, and I had my daughter and my stepson's training, and we were with Family Martial Arts in Beckley with Steve Wilcox.
Yeah, yep.
And but we couldn't get our kids there in time for the kids class, so we couldn't do it. I mean, it was, we're like, so we were playing around, and I'm like, okay, this guy I know that I worked with at the VA had a karate school in Oak Hill, and so I went out there, and that's where I met the guy that I started East Park Martial Arts with. Our kids were doing Shotokan karate out there with him, but he was weird. And he wanted me to start doing a jiu-jitsu night, and I was a brown belt at the time, and under Warren, because I had left my first school and me and Warren split, and then he passed away. And I was a brown belt, just kind of floating around, and I moved to Beckley right after that, right after he passed. And so I just started teaching jiu-jitsu there because he asked me to. And then, it became weird because he knew that first time we sparred, I put it on him, and he thought I was a jiu-jitsu guy. And, the school that I had come from, they were strikers first and grapplers second.
Yeah.
And so I've trained with a bunch of good strikers that some of them ended up professional fighters. One dude had 2 boxing matches on Showtime, and now he's on drugs now, but he's still my friend. And you can't take away his talent. They just don't let hobos go fight on Showtime.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then those are the kind of guys that I train with, and with striking and stuff. So I just put it on him right there in front of his whole students, because he kept bugging. He kept wanting me to spar. I'm like, okay, let's strap it up and let's go. And we did. And so then he wanted me to start teaching jiu-jitsu, and then it was like he just kind of would make little snide comments and that and the other. And so me and my buddy, we were like, our kids were friends on the mats, and so we were like, let's just go do something else, And so I started looking for a place, and I found this building I was actually working on a program that I was going to do with a community center down there called Cyber Warriors, because I work in IT, and I was going to start a little coding and system administration program to teach the kids in that community how to be IT professionals, for free. But we couldn't get anybody to donate equipment, or we needed switches, we needed a router, we needed some 5 computers, and it was just a difficult thing to get started. But it led me to the building that I'm at now. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to contact the guy who runs the it's located in the basement of the West Virginia Multicultural and Community Center in Beckley. So I contacted their executive director, and he was like, yeah, you can do this. We were looking to do something like this. Now we rent the basement out and stuff, but I'm like, well, you got a room or something to purchase? She's like, yeah, you can have this back room here, and you can have the whole space. Just put the stuff up when we need to rent it on a weekend, because churches had dinners and all that kind of stuff, so they rented it. And so next thing you know, we got five kids and a couple adults in there training with no mats or nothing, so I started buying puzzle mats, one payday at a time, till we had like 150 square feet of mat space, and then it grew a little bit more from that. And then the Chamber of Commerce we got with them and had a meeting with them, and I brought some kids, and they did, I'm not a big karate fan, but like the kids knew two katas from where they were doing the Shotokan. So I had them do two katas in front of the and then they did a couple of throws and takedowns that they knew. And the Chamber of Commerce was like, yeah, we're gonna help you. So they paid for half. We bought 24 square feet of, or not 24, 24 by 24 zebra mats.
No, that's really
nice. And they paid half, and they paid for the whole thing, and then the city paid for the shipping. So it was like $3,500 that the Chamber of Commerce and the city come up with to get us those zebra mats. And then, since then it just took off. I mean, we steadily have anywhere between 20 and 30 students,
which is awesome,
anytime. And it's just, we get this typical turnover. So there's probably been 300-400 kids come through there, over time. And I'm going to say this up front: I do not deserve this at all. I'm a basic person I'm just a martial artist. Okay. I've not done anything special. I've not fought professionally. I've not, won national championships or anything like that, but I'm being put into, I'll have to look up the name of it's a Hall of Fame next weekend. And it's for the work that I've done with the kids in Beckley with the nonprofit. Yeah, awesome. So at first I was like, I don't deserve this. I was like, I felt unworthy. And then I started thinking about, I'm like, actually, this is probably more worthy than anything. And the school deserves the credit. If I look at it like this, then all the people that's helped me do this thing in Beckley, I'm kind of slapping them in the face too.
Yeah.
Because they deserve the award just as much. They're giving it to me, but it's also, they're giving it to them also.
Yeah. Well, and those things are important too. I think just you're getting recognized for what you're doing, which is important. It's motivation, but I think for everybody, right? Like we kind of talked about this before a little bit. Like all those things are important because sometimes that's what people are looking for too. Like maybe that little plaque or something, and that's what changes their mind to come train with you. Like, oh, okay, well, this guy's got that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. Like sometimes all of us are like, I don't know about that, but in the end, that's what people are looking for, right? They want all that.
One more little thing about that: the guy who put me in for that, I'm not part of his organization.
Yeah, which is also nice, right?
He's an older gentleman from Parkersburg named Paul Snyder.
Yeah, I know.
Grandmaster Paul Snyder.
Which is an AKJU guy, since Gary mentioned that, right? Or used to be. I don't know if he still does.
Yeah. And we're friends on Facebook, and, we've had a couple of encounters. Like I went to his tournament. I took my kids up to when he was having his tournament, and they had a judo grappling tournament. And so we put our kids in that, and we did. I had my kids do point sparring. We don't do karate, but like, I'm like, boys, girls, we'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, under any rule set.
Yeah.
That's the way you need to live your life. Okay. Don't let the, fear of, well, we don't do that. We don't do that. Anytime you can get in front of somebody and compete with them, you won. Whether you win or lose the match, you won in life.
Which is that's a good segue to the next thing then too. So besides, you guys run tournaments, and you've hosted and you've been in Sambo tournaments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's how we know each other too, is obviously you guys have competed in Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. So you're living you're walking the walk, talking the talk kind of deal, right? It's the real deal, which is important. And that's also why, we were in several of these tournaments at different times too, because the same thing. I think if you say that and then you don't do it, it's a different thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's why I consider myself friend with everybody around. Like you said, Paul Snyder, we've a couple guys who train with me or black belts under them, and AKJU and stuff. And but it's true. Like anybody that's like minded, like him and like yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's why we need to all spread the word. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about all the tournament. I think you have a tournament coming up, correct?
Yes, we're having a tournament in February, and we're going to do sport jiu-jitsu, which is not the BJJ style. It's it'll be more like the AKJU sport jiu-jitsu with striking, grappling, takedowns, but it's light to medium contact with the striking, and so that's going to be the main event, and then we're going to have BJJ as our grappling event. And we're also going to do point sparring because I'm hoping to get a few more of the karate folks out to just witness. That's one good thing about doing the sport jiu-jitsu and having a karate event, because there might be one person that goes to a karate school and sees the jiu-jitsu or sees the sport jiu-jitsu and be like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And not that I'm trying to take people away from their karate school, but like, there's nothing wrong with cross train. I never chastise my students for cross training.
Yeah.
Like, they want to get more specialized in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. If they go train with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, as long as they're not like trying to recruit people out of my school to leave my school, as long as we're good, have a reciprocal respect for each other, I don't go cross train wherever you want. If you want to go to a boxing gym and learn more about boxing, go do it. It only makes our students better when you come back and spar with us, So
it's the right philosophy to have, but unfortunately, that's why I think sometimes you'll hear people like us and inadvertently say stuff bad about karate. We don't mean that. Honestly, I think all of us respect karate. I think what we really mean by that is most of those times, most of those guys are very traditional. They don't like their students cross training, and karate is the ultimate be all. Now, that's not everybody, right? But a lot of the traditional martial arts, whether it's Taekwondo, Kung Fu, they'll be like, you don't need to know that other stuff. It's all bull crap. And that's why we kind of say the things we do too, because it's like we hear that all the time. So then when we finally talk, there's kind of like an attitude coming out of our mouth. It doesn't mean we don't like it, but I know where it comes from. I'm the same way. I'm like,
and I've had this discussion with karate people too. I'm like, we have philosophical difference. Okay, you think the bunkai of karate is effective self-defense in itself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think now some of my people that I'm involved with in jiu-jitsu, which you may recognize a few of their names, Mickey Heath. He's from way back in the day. Yeah. He's a karate-based guy. Now, the way he explains the bunkai with his students, it does support things you do in jiu-jitsu and in judo. Like the C step in karate. That's the step they take in their katas, where they kind of circle their foot out when they step forward in a C motion. Well, that step alone, just that step is one part of it, but that could be the step into a sotogari.
Yeah.
And off balancing the opponent with that step out, to get the leg sweep. I'm like, okay, I respect that approach, but like most karate people are like, well, you can do this and that and that. And I'm like, I like it for discipline for kids.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm not teaching my self-defense that way. We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. Exactly. There's a reason you do what I do, and I do what I do, and Gary, that guy does what he does, and that's okay. It doesn't mean like if somebody likes boxing more than kickboxing, I like kickboxing. I'm not like, well, you don't kick. It's like, okay, you like that, I like this. And I think that when, and the reason I wanted to say that, because I wanted, if anybody ever hears me say, like, I like everybody that trains everything. You know, I mean, I really do.
Better than sitting on the couch.
Yeah, and even I can argue that if you get in a fight and somebody knows nothing, it doesn't matter what you train, you should be better than the other guy.
Right? You should be able to hit that down in the face really good.
Yeah, so arguably they're still doing something that's pretty good. Yeah. That's where it is. That's where ultimately, like when somebody else said this or that, I just said, well, man, I don't do that. I believe something different, but they're okay. What it is, I wouldn't. And then just leave it at that. And like what you said too about the kids is the same, man. I'll have parents call a lot of times because that's all they know, and they say, "Hey, I want to sign my son up for karate." I'm like, "Well, just so you know, we don't do karate." Yeah. They see the word jiu-jitsu, they don't know what that means, and I'm like, "It's this part." And then some of them are like, "Well, no, I want them to punch and kick." And they'll ask me, "What do you think?" And instead of just obviously they're on the phone with me. Yeah. But I'll tell them if that's what you want, then karate's good. I do agree that it's great for kids. I wouldn't do it as an adult, but that's just me. Yeah. And some other adult would disagree with me, and that's fine too. I just like if you're asking me, my opinion is it's great for your kid, and that's it. That's what I'd say, But I still give them credit. Again, I say that because I just want to. I really do respect everybody that trains anything. It's awesome. I think we're all the same. I just want to make sure if anybody hears something weird come out of my mouth, it's not from a hard being an asshole type thing. It's just I like what I like. And,
me either. I did karate with Jim, with the guy in Oak Hill for a while. So I understand what they're trying to do, but I like doing it a different way. I think a different way is better.
Yeah, exactly. So what? Tell me about the. Go ahead.
The tournament that we're going to have is on February 5th.
Okay. Not too far from my birthday. That's nice. All right.
Yeah.
Is that in Beckley? No, you said
where? That one's in Beckley.
Okay, Beckley. And I think, just so you guys, like all of, obviously we're in West Virginia, so like if people that are from my gym are listening, I think this is awesome. Like I have guys that fight MMA, fight kickboxing. There's a time you could go in and use, like, this is kind of a form of it, right? You should go in and practice. You're doing some stuff. And for the guys that, like, the same thing, what we just talked about, I have guys at my gym because we have Muay Thai, we have, straight jiu-jitsu, we have MMA. So it's funny because sometimes the Muay Thai guy thinks all the jiu-jitsu guys are gay, and all the jiu-jitsu guys think the Muay Thai guy doesn't know what he's doing. So it's like, why don't you go out and figure out, like, now you can kind of put yourself in a simulated fight, which is a real fight. And if you think jiu-jitsu is gay, go out there and see if they can take you down and do not, like, it's a great environment. We're not really going to get, like, destroyed like a real MMA fight, right? It's
yeah. And, I have a friend that he has a school in Madison, West Virginia, and he has a tiny bit of sport jiu-jitsu background, and that whole background of of that time frame when sport jiu-jitsu was big here, but he's got several guys that fight MMA in that Logan, in that promotion that's down in Logan, new line cage fighting or something like that.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
Yeah, and they're guys that come to my tournaments. They're like, the last one I had, it was really small. It was in-house at my dojo. We maybe had 20 competitors. One of his guys that does MMA fights come there, and he was going to do the grappling. He was going to do both of them. And after the combat jiu-jitsu was done, and the same thing for sport jiu-jitsu, this happens. It's just the pace of the tournament. And, he goes, I'm more gassed now. I can't go on. I can't do the grappling. I'm gassed. He had three matches in the combat jiu-jitsu in his tournament. And then he was like, I need to make this part of my, obviously it's not MMA, but he was really surprised that even though it wasn't full contact, he was so gassed.
Well, so are your rounds 3 minutes? Is that right or no? Or
yeah.
So that's a good point, because that is
a combat jiu-jitsu. In sport jiu-jitsu, it's a minute and a half.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point because it's for guys. If we're just talking about jujitsu, it's like jujitsu versus wrestling, right? If you wrestle, they're doing a sprint, and that's why they're geared for something different, which is essentially what you guys are doing. If you're MMA and it's a 5 minute round, you're kind of like chilling out, trying to save yourself, and all of a sudden now you're sprinting, throwing punches, kicks, and the refs starting you back up really fast, and it's like, it's a different thing altogether, which is awesome. Which I'm glad you explained that because it's again, guys, our gym's been part of these things, and I think which is why I wanted you to have on here because I think people don't know what's going on, and I think a lot of it's just the terminology, like because they know one form of terminology, not the other. I'm constantly explaining stuff at the gym,
and
vice versa.
The other thing is like some people just want to be full contact fighters. They don't want to. That's all they want. They want to do that. They want to do BJJ. And that's it. And I respect that. But like, there's a lot of people out there, especially adults that might want to still compete that never want to do an MMA fight. Yeah. And that's the combat jiu-jitsu and the sport jiu-jitsu. Those are the type of formats that are appropriate for them, Yeah. And there's some of my students I would never allow. I would like, if you go do an MMA fight, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
You're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And you are never going to be able to be an MMA fighter. I'm sorry. You can be a martial artist, but your body, your athleticism, you're not cut out right. You're going to have to do a major years-long change in your lifestyle to make yourself ready to step in to the ring for one round of MMA. Because you're going to get hurt. Don't do it. You can do well in grappling tournaments. You can do well in karate tournaments or sport jiu-jitsu tournaments. It's a different animal. And like, they're going to, have you ever been, we hard spar sometimes, but we never full contact spar, and, we've had hard enough to where maybe every now and then somebody gets a broken nose or a black eye in a few times in 3 or 4 years that people's have broken noses. That's pretty good contact, close to full contact. But I don't want them doing that all the time because it's not healthy, but sometimes I'll let them go. And then, all right, boys, we're going hard tonight. Let's go, or, hey guys, we're going to do light sparring tonight,
So what kind of contact is in the competitions? Because I'm still a little uncertain on
what we like to say stiff contact for combat jiu-jitsu, less than full contact. So let's say if you had to put a percentage on it, let's say between 50 and 75%. Whereas sport jiu-jitsu would be more like 50% and karate would be like more like 50%.
How do you monitor that, stopping somebody from coming out just blasting something? You just kind of know, like, hey, that.
Yeah, you have to have good referees, and a lot of it depends on the referee judgment. If you got an old, some dude that's like, that's not hard, you kind of have to be careful about letting that guy referee, because you want to stay within the laws. You don't want to get in trouble with the athletic commission. You don't want to get people hurt. So you have to put the right people out there to referee, and it's all in the referee's hands. I've had to go tell one of my referees, I'm like, dude, you need to dial back the contact.
Yeah.
It's right at that edge, about to get out of control.
Yeah.
And then there's no strikes to the head.
There is strikes to the head, but in combat jiu-jitsu, in sport jiu-jitsu, any of it, there's a T zone. Okay. Right here and right here. There's no contact in this area because we try to avoid damaging the eyes, breaking the nose, and knocking the teeth out. So you're allowed to go to the chin. You're allowed to go anywhere where a helmet is, that's from the ears forward, is legal. So I always tell my kids, I'm like, when you strike someone, just strike the helmet.
Yeah.
strike to the area where the helmet is. And then, the adults should know that by now. I don't make my adults wear headgear unless they want to when we stand up spar, because there should be going about 50%. On some nights they'll go hard and I'll be like, all right, boys, we're going to go hard, but look, if you want to wear headgear, wear it, but if you don't, I don't want to hear it. If you get your nose broke, I don't want to hear it, because you know what we're doing, know.
Yeah, we had some boxers fighting those before too, and like for example, they're straight boxers, meaning they didn't even know how to grapple.
Yeah,
and because they're the same reason they're saying they want to do MMA and they're starting getting into grappling, but they weren't ready for that, and they did fine. I had like a couple guys that wouldn't let him. Like he stayed in a boxing stance and threw jabs and rights to the body the whole time, and they couldn't get close to him. And fine, it was what it was.
They're tough. Boxers are tough. So I mean.
Yeah, it was like skirting the rules for that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, meaning they wasn't the most exciting thing. I remember the refs, and actually might have been Paul Snyder and one of them. I remember yelling at him because he's like, well,
you mean like the sport jiu-jitsu type?
Yeah, and they're like, you've got to start engaging and not, because they want to see you at least go to the ground a little bit, right? Too.
Yeah. Some of the there are so many sport jiu-jitsu organizations right now, it's not funny.
Yeah.
They're trying to unify the sport jiu-jitsu rules.
Yeah,
so I think they can go to international competition. Every country that they go compete with, they have one set sport jiu-jitsu rule set that the whole country uses.
Yeah.
We don't have that here. It varies between we're striking and I initiate a takedown. We cannot go back to striking no matter what happens.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
Some of the sport jiu-jitsu organizations are like that. I don't particularly like that. I like to make it as much like an MMA fight. So if we break, we're back to anything's on the table. Within the rules. But some of the organizations that they do, they limit what you can do. They want to see all phases.
Yeah. And that's just I like that as a rule set, right? Like, meaning that I don't know how you would do it, but you could have combat jiu-jitsu A, B, C, D, E, you know what I mean? It's like different levels for a guy maybe scared to get kneed in the clinch or something. Yeah. So that would be a phase where you're no, once you clinch, there's no more. You don't have to worry about losing your teeth on accident or something, from a knee.
Yeah, that's the other thing I forgot to mention about combat jiu-jitsu. There are no skill divisions. It's Sambo. With Sambo and combat jiu-jitsu and sport Sambo, it's all weight classes.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's like wrestling. You go, you weigh in, everybody that's your weight class is your division, whether you got 1 month or 10 years experience.
Interesting. Well, that a little.
That makes it tough. That's what the combat jiu-jitsu is the way it's working. It's for athletes.
Mm-hmm.
The sport jiu-jitsu is more for the average adult, in my opinion. If you want to do all three, grappling, Sambo, and BJJ are the deal. Sambo's not very big here right now, but it's getting there. And but BJJ is right now probably I think the best grappling format, because it does take into your skill level and your weight class. So dudes aren't getting thrown to the wolves,
Yeah.
But if you sign up for Sambo, the deal when you sign up,
Yeah. Oddly enough, it happened to us. We did a judo tournament one time and don't know judo, and they stuck our guys with, I think they're trying to prove a point, but they stuck all our guys with black belts, and
wow.
Yeah,
I want to get some judo going too. I want to, even if Ben, my buddy Ben, he's a regional USA Judo Olympic coach, certified. So he can sign off on promotion packets up to brown belt now. When he gets his 3rd degree in judo, which is coming not too long from now, he can sign off on up to 1st degree. black belt. But like the USA Judo, the Olympic style, the way he does it, it's all based on wins in tournaments. He does not promote anybody. You got to be training, obviously, but you can't win in tournaments unless you're training, you know. So you go to a tournament as if you've never done judo, then you would be in the beginner division, which is green belt, white belt to green belt. And then the advanced divisions are purple belt and up. So, you know, if you're purple belt, you're going to be fighting black belts in judo and the USA Olympic style judo. Now there's 2 or 3 different judo organizations. Some of those rank people through belt tests. Some of those will rank people through judo kata, which to me is like, have you ever seen the no-gi kata judo thing? It's like 10 minutes of straight aerobic judo, like 30 or 40 some throws, and you're like, you know, bouncing all the way down the mat and doing throw and coming back, and like with no breaks, you know. And so the competition, even though it's tough, it's the easiest route to promotion in the Olympic version of judo. And if USA Judo, you can sign up for it for $75. And that is the same organization. You're signing up for the same thing as the people that are going to the Olympics. It's the same thing.
And I think I was part of that at one time, I think. I don't remember who was.
So I'm trying to get some of my guys and some people I know that do sport jiu-jitsu and to train a little bit of throws and stuff. I'm like, dude, what will it hurt to go sign up for a couple USA Judo tournaments, drive to Virginia or drive to Ohio, and Ben will rank you. Just turn in your wins and you can get your rank from USA Judo in judo.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's nothing to do with me, but it would be nice to have some legit judo people in West Virginia with the Olympic version of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, the real deal, right? Yeah.
And I mean, the other ones are real judo. They're just
that's probably their bad terminology on my part, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, but Ben says that if you go out of this country, the USA Judo is the one that you would get recognized for internationally. The other ones, like you go and you try to get over to, let's say, England, they're not going to recognize most of the other judo rank from any of the other organizations. But every country recognizes USA Judo rank.
Yes. Well, and it's just like anything else. There's a bunch of things that splintered off, a bunch of people that they have their own organization, and most of the time it doesn't matter until you do something like that. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know, okay, so mine's not what his was, and that's the time you find out,
right?
Not good, right, for those people. But
if you're never going to overseas, it doesn't matter. You know, if you're just doing judo because you love judo and you love to compete, and it's just something you're interested in that stuff and you want to get better at throws, you know, I've thought about signing up, and I still may sign up with one of the US Jiu-Jitsu Association and try to get ranked through them, you know, in judo. I'm going to have to, you know, when I retire, I'm going to have a lot more time. So, and I hurt my back. I had back surgery a few years ago, and it put me on the DL. I mean, it just about ended my life. You know, I've had a lot of problems with it, and mentally at first, you know, but I got a lot of other stuff going on from my time in the military that mixed with that. So I've got to get myself back to where I'm getting out on the mat and competing a little bit, you know, and training this. Like I've thought about, I'm like, you know what, if I could sign up for this USJA thing, you know, and that would just give me something totally new.
Might be motivational kind of.
Yeah. You know, something, self-development type thing to try to just, it's not something I ever want to be my main thing, I also want to, back to my school in Mason County that I'm going to open. It's going to be called the, crap. Can't believe I can't think of the name of it. Hold on. I'm so stuck on all this other stuff. I forgot the name of my daggone school.
Well, so you got East Park is your Beckley one, right? Is that right?
Yeah, this one's going to be the shoot.
Because I saw
can you drop it? There it is. The Savage Combatives Academy.
Perfect.
That's my logo.
Actually, I remember seeing that the other day because it reminds me. We have a guy in Moundsville, Jay Corley. They're Odin's Eye, but anyway, their symbol looks similar, right? Which I like it. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. So that that may be something I do with that school, and just when I retire, I can just spend extra time to go to class early, go to the dojo early, and just kind of work on stuff for me.
So are you guys, this is kind of off topic in a way, but not really, but speaking of like the Sambo tournaments you guys ran, are you guys getting big into leg locks because of Sambo, or kind of not, or just?
We want to. Yeah. But like my school in Beckley, I don't have a lot of adult competitors, and Sambo doesn't, there's not a lot of kids doing Sambo. We have had a couple of Sambo tournaments in Beckley, and one of them was pretty big. We had people from all over the country come, from Michigan, Kentucky, Texas. And that was one of the first ones that Ben started getting involved in, and he comes and runs our Sambo tournaments and events for us, and I would say we had 35 Sambo players that came to it.
It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, total. And at his, I went and ran the scoreboard for the Sambo Nationals, where they picked a team to go to overseas, the USA that went to the Pan Am Games or something. Yeah. And that was something.
Yeah. I don't remember when it was, but like I think 2002-ish, we had two guys compete in that.
Yeah.
Which they got murdered, but well, that's unfair to them. They didn't do so good, let's say that. They didn't, but in fairness, we were just sent in like the day before, I think. So
did they compete in the Sambo or the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the Pan Am?
The Sambo. They went straight to Russia around the USA team, and that's why they went. They didn't know anything about Sambo, and I said, hey, listen, I'm not expecting you to do much, but imagine going to Russia and competing and getting paid and a free trip. They're like, I'm in, right?
Yeah.
So,
heck yeah. There is a strategy in Sambo.
Yeah, and I think one of them actually did okay because he figured out something after watching a little bit, and
you can't play from your back at all.
Yeah, it might have been what he figured out or something.
Like if you guard up, all they have to do is come forward and kind of smash and get chest to chest, and it's a pin. So you're sitting there playing guard and thinking you're good.
Yeah.
And, next thing you know, you're down 2 points because he's just pinned you.
That's an operable set. It goes back to which I just listened to that book Breathe the other day, but there was a rumor that Hickson lost in the Sambo tournament, and that's how he lost. But maybe he didn't.
And then when you get thrown, the ideal thing is just turn over and lay on your belly and try to get 2 inches deep into the mat.
Yeah.
And so if they can't turn you over, they can't score.
Yeah.
There's not chokes in Sambo, in sport Sambo, the grappling portion.
Let's learn.
Combat Sambo, where it's like MMA, there are chokes allowed.
Well, speaking of that book, then that's funny because Gary, have you listened to that book or read it now? It's good. It's about the some of the history that we like. But anyway, listening to him frame the Sambo, meaning Hickson Gracie tournament, he was like, we were submitting everybody, so then they told us that we couldn't choke them no more, and they took the rules and made it so we couldn't. It turns out from talking to you that must be the Sambo rules in general. Yeah. So Yeah, they all like. I think everybody but Hickson end up losing, and these were like some killers, like Jean-Jacques
Yeah,
Machado. You know, what I mean, but
yeah.
they just like anything else. Like, there's no shame in that. They were doing what we said. They
They
went
didn't
in.
know the rules. It's not that they're better grapplers per se. It's
Yeah,
just different rule set, and they just didn't. They weren't familiar with it, you know. But there
yeah,
are a lot of like when I went to that nationals, dude, there were some killers there at that, and there was probably only 35 or 40 dudes there, and a couple of them, not all of them, but a couple of them, I was like,
they're pretty badass. Yeah.
yeah, like it
Well,
made me go, wow, you know.
even when everybody was saying that Fedor Emelianenko was like the best heavyweight in the world, he was actively competing in sambo tournaments. So is
Yeah,
his.
yeah,
A lot of people don't know, but that did give some exposure to sambo because every now and then those videos would leak out on YouTube and people would watch them because it was Fedor,
yeah,
and they still didn't really understand what was going on because they're always just clips, you know.
yeah.
But it was good because you need that to kind of, and that's probably why he did it. You know, he brought attention to a sport that the
Yeah,
rest of the world didn't know what it meant. You know, which is
yeah,
really smart and nice of him. I'm sure that's probably why he did it.
yeah,
Which
Well,
is
and then we
awesome.
also have also Khabib. Khabib was a sambo guy,
yeah, yep,
and had a lot of success doing sambo. It was a multiple
yeah,
time champion, I believe.
yeah,
And so like now you get more people interested in it, and really that's what karate kind of lost its luster there for a little while, and then you got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson coming
yeah,
out
yeah,
and doing what he does in the UFC, and maybe highlighting it, saying, hey, it doesn't necessarily have to be this point
yeah,
touch kind of thing.
right,
This is it's a
yeah,
legitimate martial art. And I think that's what it all boils down to is we all want to see. I, th- I Even jujitsu a little bit can get watered down,
yeah,
and people it becomes about money, and that's I think that's really what people get worried about, is like when it becomes about the money, because the real guys don't make anything,
yeah,
and when it
yeah,
becomes about money and making money, then you have to sacrifice some of the values that are there, as far as it being a martial art, in order to
yeah,
make it a monetary art.
yeah,
So
yeah,
and that's the thing. There's a delicate balance that you have to tread, in order to keep these things uh pure.
yeah. I want to. I am going to start blending handgun combatives into my training. I've already had one seminar in Beckley and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm going to even take it further than that. That was just handgun retention. Somebody tries to take your firearm from you. But I'm also going to incorporate firearms grappling, where we're gonna line up. You got a concealed weapon, I got a concealed weapon. Maybe it's they make special sim round guns, or uh, what's the one that shoots the little rubber BB things?
Airsoft.
Airsoft, where make sure we got iPro one or whatever. I'm gonna have mine in my holster, and you're gonna have yours in your holster, and we're gonna go. And the objective is to shoot each other. If you
Yeah.
get shot, you lost. And because in today's reality, that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
That's a real thing.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
And for people that don't think it is, I don't know if anybody does, but because I've had this conversation with somebody before, but like what, like it's weird because we look at traditional martial arts and they'll still do nunchucks or bow staff and stuff that we don't use in fights anymore. Doesn't mean it's not beautiful, and I appreciate what they're doing. But why are we not training in modern weapons, right? There's a reason they were training with swords and doing that stuff, because that's what they used. We don't use that anymore, so we should be updating it, like
Yeah.
knives and handguns. Until somebody had that talk with me, like I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." He's like, "Well, no, martial arts now is not sword fighting; it's
Yeah.
guns, and you should be able to use all guns, a rifle, a handgun." And
Yep.
I was like, "Man, that does make a lot of sense," and
Yep.
I'm on board with that 100%, because that's the part we didn't update. We updated everything else, Or why we fight with nunchucks? I've never seen a pair of nunchucks laying on the ground ever in the history.
No.
Maybe I'm not hanging out in the right places, but they're definitely not in West Virginia hanging out. I know that.
No. And the only way that would come into play, it wouldn't be nunchucks. It would be like you using some type of improvised weapon in a really quick, fast way to distract your enemy so you could get an attack and close the distance. That'd be the only, like we did it. My buddy Greg, has the MMA fighters, he had us. I went down there and I was teaching some throws and stuff. And while I was there, I got out there with the students, and he was doing nunchucks that night with the little foam ones. And he goes, this is goofy. These are goofy, but like he brought a towel out and he did the same motions with the towel, and like, you're standing there, somebody's getting ready to attack you, smack them in the face with that motion. And then, you're not just going to continue fighting with the towel, but bam, now you've got to interrupted their thought pattern and distracted them. And now you can that'll help you close the distance to use what you really use.
Yeah, I like it. Props to him.
He's the only thing that, I feel like that you could go with that.
No, but honestly, props to him for coming up with a modern way to use that, right? I think that's awesome. It would be like when people ask me out of all of them, I said, well, I could see somebody picking up a stick, right, and fighting.
Yeah, poke you. Yeah.
Exactly, which is why I was like, that's the only one I could see work. And then there was a time like 20 years ago when the Dog Brothers were real popular, that were, I think they did Machado Jiu-Jitsu, but then they also fought basically MMA with sticks with a screamer. And I would never do that. It was fun to watch. They put like some fencing helmets on and beat the shit out of each other with some sticks and grapple.
Yeah.
Great videos, because people get they take their fencing helmet off, which is not, I don't even know why they wore, I guess they wore it for eye protection. But if you got hit in the head, like they take that little helmet off and blood would squirt like a sprinkler, and fantastic to watch. But I was like, I am never going to do that stuff. And it was awesome at the time. They came up with chokes to use with the sticks. They'd get behind them and choke, and pretty cool stuff. But it was another example of people trying to modernize the weapon training, which I think's awesome, man. Anytime somebody's doing something new and innovative, just like you mentioned with Greg and Madison, I've always liked Greg. He's a good dude, man. He does that. Same thing. I mean, he's always on, let's say, like the cutting edge, but he's using his brain outside the same box, just like the rest of stuff.
He loves karate. He's a karate dude. That's what he came up with. But like, he sends his adults to go do MMA fights.
He does.
He trains them and they go fight and they win. Them guys down at New Line, they don't like him. They make fun of him. But his guys, a couple of his guys are the champions down there right now. And
there's from those Logan and Madison people, they're just tough.
You make fun of him, but he's coming to your event and winning.
Yes, yeah.
I think you'd be like giving them some credit and like using it as PR or something,
Yeah, and for people that don't know too, like Gary knows this guy, but Bobby Bailey trains at his gym and helps him with jiu-jitsu and stuff. So he's one of those guys that looks, just like all the rest of us. They're looking what's effective in any martial art and trying to put it together. And clearly, like you said, he's done it because he has some champions. So it doesn't matter what his background is or what he does, just like any of us. If the product is the proof, and if your product is the champion, then the proof is in what you're teaching and his flow.
Exactly. Have you spent any time with Samantha?
Yeah. She was at our last tournament.
She's
really well. Yes, yeah.
I love her because she goes like I tell my students, you get in the ring, wherever it's at, whatever the rules are, just get in there and do it. And she lives that more than anybody I know.
And absolutely,
she's done full contact sport sambo. Never done it before. Stepped in there at the Sambo Nationals. She went to the Sambo Nationals. Only done Sambo a few times. Stepped out there and did it with people who've been doing it for years.
Yeah, which is awesome. And same for, I think it might have been the state tournament that she joined. I think one of them.
Yeah, she was there. I saw her there at your tournament, and she did good in the white belt division.
Yeah, she did really well. She's super nice girl too. I think I had. I think I gave her. I was trying to think what I said to her, but I didn't know her too well. I just said, "Tell Bobby he sucks" or something like that.
Yeah.
That's all I remember, because I remember Bobby wrote me a text and was like, "I heard you said," and I was like, "What is he talking about?" And it took me a month to remember that small conversation that I had. I was like, "Oh, that's right. I told him that girl to tell him he's garbage or something," as a joke.
So you mentioned Bobby. Back to my school in Point Pleasant. I'd talked to you about doing BJJ at my new school, and I wanted to talk to you about this because we're going to teach it there, but a guy I went to high school with and I wrestled with is a purple belt who's from here and still lives here, who's a purple belt in San Diego. He's going to help me teach it there.
Oh, is that Billy Vickers?
Lewis Markham.
Lewis Markham. I don't know him. I'm just guessing. I know everybody. So if they come to tournaments,
yeah. So like I was seriously going to see about what you could do to help us put a program in for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then, my buddy really wants to do it here too.
Yeah.
And we're friends. We grew up together. And so, that's why I didn't follow up with you on that. And we're going to go, that's what we're going to do. And I'm actually going to take his class once a week.
Yeah. Well, I think when you step in there, I try to do that at my gym too, even classes I don't go to necessarily.
Well, I'm not ranked in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I'm going to try to get my blue belt.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
And I'm probably, unless they get some divisions where I can only go against people over 50, I don't know how much competing I'm going to do. Because like every single competition format, the Masters is like 36 and over. I'm like, shit, it's almost been 20 years since I was 36. Yeah. I'll be 53 this year.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We had, how old was Bugs, Gary? Do you remember? In the 70s, I think?
I think he was, if he wasn't 70, he was close to 70, but I think he was 70, 71, something like that.
Yeah.
But just props to that guy again, too. We're trying to get him on the podcast. But yeah, he went in with, he didn't even do Masters. He went with all the 18-year-olds. Now, he didn't necessarily do that great. He didn't do terrible, but it showed with those 18-year-olds didn't take it easy because they're like, I'm not losing some old man, and they went crazy.
Yeah.
Which I felt bad for. I was like, well, that's garbage. You guys should have. No, that's not everybody. There's some guys that did a proper match, but I get it too. It's like if
how embarrassing would it be?
Yeah, it's like I went on the other side, but he did great, man, and he was enough to where the whole tournament was talking, right? Like, I can't believe guys out there, and that's the point of it all, right?
All right, man, you're putting the pressure on me. You're putting the peer pressure on me here.
Yeah,
I'm feeling guilty. Okay, I'm gonna have to go compete against some 18-year-olds.
Yeah, I would. I'm sure Bugs is hurting for a long time. That's the one thing we don't recover like the rest of them. You could do it.
Yeah.
We'll pay for it for a couple weeks, huh?
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, with all the stuff that you have going on, because it sounds like you're busy.
Yeah, I am.
With all the stuff and getting your school set up, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you and contact you? Is it just Facebook or?
Facebook on Horton Jiu-Jitsu is my Facebook name that I that's the one I use for Beckley. And I created a whole nother one under my real name for Savage Combatives because I wanted to use separate Facebook accounts my personal one that I've been using is Horton Jiu-Jitsu, and you can get me there. You can get me at Elephant Jiu-Jitsu at outlook.com as well. And the story behind Elephant Jiu-Jitsu is, and my logo for East Park is my stepson was 7. And so you know how kids are. My last name's Horton. So Horton here's a who came up. And so he drew I have it somewhere. I wish I had it available right now. he went and hand drew an elephant in a gi and said and showed it to me, not knowing anything about a logo or anything. And he goes, Horton Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he gave it to me, and I'm like, that's our logo. That's what we're doing. And I changed my email to Elephant Jiu-Jitsu after that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I hate to run on you guys. I got some stuff to do this afternoon. But again, Chet, thank you for joining us. Butch, anything to add? Anything?
No,
closing statements.
No, let's all, well, yes and no, but let's all support his jiu-jitsu tournament on jiu-jitsu and combat jiu-jitsu on February 5th in Beckley. And he'll be posting stuff. I always try to share their stuff. So fun talking to another guy that's like-minded like us, that just wants to see the sport grow in all aspects and have people cross-train and do the things that we encourage and just try to make the world a better place, our little world, West Virginia, Ohio, and North Carolina, and that's awesome. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and congratulations on the Hall of Fame coming up, and congratulations on all the stuff that you got going on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well-deserved. Thank you, and thank you, Butch, and guys, we'll see you later.
Okay, have a good one.
All right, you too, man. See you.
Okay, bye.